I'm here today to talk about the power differential in professional practice. So why is it so important to understand power in the therapeutic relationship? As a therapist, when people are seeking help and they're coming to you, they are in a position in which they must trust in the knowledge and the guidance of their caregiver or therapist or social worker, whatever the case may be. This usually results in a greater than normal or a greater than ordinary vulnerability on their part, and those people can be unusually susceptible to harm and confusion through the misuse of power and influence on the part of the therapist, or it could be doctor or anyone in the position of power over them in this moment when they are in a vulnerable position. So the definition of up power versus down power is pretty simple, really. Up power is the type of power that you have when you are in the position of having power over someone else. When you have down power, you are usually the one seeking services, or you're the one pulled over on the side of the road by a police officer getting a ticket. You're the one in the doctor's office. You are not the one that has the power in whatever situation it is that you're in at the moment. So up power is the person who has the power, and down power is the person that is usually considered a little more vulnerable, or without the power in the situation. So there is usually always going to be a power inequality whenever you take on a role that gives you authority over another person, or in a role that creates the perception that you have the authority. So what are some roles with up power that you can think of? What immediately comes to my mind is a supervisor, a member of the clergy, a doctor, a lawyer, judge, police officer, a coach, a teacher, a therapist, counselor, a social worker, a parent. If there's any others, let me know. So now we're going to talk about personal power versus role power. Personal power is an individual's ability to have an effect on others or to have influence on others. Some people just naturally have more charisma, more of a leadership quality. And these are the people that tend to command more power in relationships or in social situations than others. These may be the ones making more plans in your friend group or in your relationship. This may be the person that your friends and relatives turn to for help over other friends or relatives. And role power is the added-on power that a person assumes that is accompanied by their role or job. I'm a social worker, so I'm going to use the term taking off your social work hat. Not a literal hat, honestly, but when it comes to personal power versus role power, your personal power is always with you, but your role power is usually what you assume when you're at work, when you're in that role. And what can happen is a misuse of your power when you forget to take off that hat. In my case, it would be my social work hat or my therapist hat. If you forget to take off your professional hat, leave it at the door when you leave the office, when you take that home with you, it can cause some problems in your personal dynamics at home. So for example, a police officer on the job is usually commanding a lot of respect, a lot of power, literally has the power over people's freedom at times. If they take you in, arrest you, that kind of thing. What happens if he goes home and he has not taken off that power hat, and he goes home and treats his family the same way he would the criminals that he deals with, and the way he interacts with people on the job, not his coworkers, but the other people that he deals with on the job, is not going to necessarily be a healthy way to go home and deal with your spouse or your children. So what might that look like, if he's treating his family in the same way that he treats people he has to come across in the line of duty? I'm not going to assume that all police officers are the same, but what immediately comes to my mind is being real authoritative, issuing commands instead of requests, demanding that people immediately do what he says or else. And for a therapist, for me, something I can relate to a little more, definitely needs to not carry that same, I know for me personally, I need to not carry that same dynamic home with me that I might have when I'm at work. If you are a therapist or a social worker or psychiatrist, psychologist, if you don't leave that at the door when you go home, if you talk to your spouse, talk to your children with that therapy tone of voice or answer with those therapy type questions, I mean, you can't be a therapist to your spouse. You can't be a therapist to your children. That's not your role at home like it is your role at work. So you might be accused of acting like a know-it-all, acting like you're always right, analyzing people, being told, oh, you think you have all the answers, or you think you're better than me. It's kind of putting yourself in a position of power over your spouse or over your family members that really, most relationships are healthier when approached with the idea that you're both equals. One doesn't have the power over the other. So you can see how this would cause trouble if you don't leave your professional persona at home. So our roles at home can vary vastly. They can be different from our roles at work, and self-awareness is the key. We may need a transition time to mentally take off that professional hat and then to be able to fully step into the role that we have at home. So for a lot of people, that's the drive home from work. Clearing your mind of your work day, getting ready to be in your role, in my case, as a wife or as a mother. You need a mental transition to leave your work at work and to fully be present in your role in your home. And that can be difficult for a lot of people because it's not like you turn your training off. I mean, you still have it. All that is still in your mind, but you have to choose when and how to use it. So a personal example that I can give is I have some good friends who are also therapists. One in particular that I'm thinking of, I might call her up or she might call me up and say, I need to talk. And let's say it's about a relationship. So she calls me up and says, I need some girl time, I need to talk to you. And she might tell me what's going on, with this relationship or whatever. And an answer or a response that I might give her is, are you wanting friend advice or therapy advice? Because the advice is going to be different. A lot of times, most of the time really, when we go to our friend for advice, friends are not usually given the best advice. They're not trained. When we go to our friends, let's be honest, most of the time we're wanting to hear that we are right. We're wanting someone to back us up. We're not wanting to hear that we were in the wrong or that we could have done something better. We're usually wanting some encouragement, someone to be on our side. So when I ask my friend, are you coming to me as a friend or are you coming to me as a therapist? If she says as a friend, it's kind of a joke between us, but only half of a joke. My friend answer might be something along the lines of, girl, you were too good for him anyway, or he wasn't good enough for you, you can do better. Don't report me to the licensing board here, because I'm not saying this as a social worker or as a therapist, but, my friend answer might be, let's go have a margarita, get him off your mind that way, something along those lines. Like I said, friends are not always going to be there with the best advice for you, but sometimes that's what we need. We need someone to just be on our side, But as a therapist, if she's coming to me or if I'm going to her looking for some legitimate help because I know that she's a trained professional and I trust her judgment and I know that she feels the same way about me. So if I go to her for advice as a therapist, I'm really actually coming to you because I want your professional opinion here, then her answer might be something more serious, something more along the lines of, well, I see that whenever someone starts getting close to you, you do something to sabotage the relationship. So maybe we need to talk and explore why you seem to have this fear of commitment. So that's not usually the answer you would get from a friend. But as a therapist, if your friends or your family members are coming to you for friend advice, they might not want to hear you tell them that they have a problem with commitment. They're not wanting to explore the issues that they have or the problems that they have. A lot of times they're just wanting to have someone on their side, to know that you're there for them. And when you approach them with your therapy hat still on, then that can cause some problems in your relationship with your friends and family, because they don't need you to be a therapist in that moment. They just need you to be there as a friend. So that's how, using your roles and being aware of your roles in certain situations can be important. In the course of our day as a professional, we are going to move through various times where we have up power and down power. So let's just kind of go through a typical day. So let's say I wake up in the morning, I am getting my kids ready for work, or I'm getting my kids ready for school and out the door. In that moment, I am in a position of up power. I am the one with the power in the relationship with my children. Let's say when I'm driving to work and I get pulled over and I'm being given a speeding ticket, I am in the position of down power in that moment. I'm not the one with the power in that dynamic, for sure. So say I get to work and I'm a therapist and I have my sessions with my clients. I am in more of a up power position during that time. And then I have a meeting with my supervisor. I am in a down power position then, because obviously my supervisor is the one with more power in that dynamic. And then I might go and see some more clients, so I am again in a position of up power. And then let's say I have a doctor's appointment before I go home. I am in a position of down power in that moment. The doctor is the one with the greater power in that relationship dynamic. And then when I go home, at least at my house, and I hope it's the same way for most of you, or at least if that's the way you want it to be, neither one of us should really have the power over the other. You go home, you need to not feel in a position of down power, or the one that has the power. You should be on equal footing. And I've already talked about the need to leave your professional hat at the door and come home and, leave that role behind and be who you're supposed to be at home. So during the course of a day, we can go through a lot of different shifts, power shifts, and most of the time this happens and we are totally unaware of it. And so this unconscious shifting of the roles can make it more difficult sometimes to understand the dynamics of power and the impacts that it has on our relationships and our interactions with other people. So power differential is not always a bad thing. Power can be misused for sure, but the power differential can be a good thing. The value in having the power differential, for instance, when I go to a doctor or I go to a therapist, I want to be in an environment where I feel like I'm getting what I need, where I trust their judgment, I trust their greater knowledge and their skill. I want them to be skilled, I want them to be professional, I want them to treat me with respect. All things that we expect them to have in their role. Unfortunately, they don't always do that. I've been to plenty doctor's visits where I felt like I was treated very disrespectful, where I wasn't being listened to, where my needs weren't being taken into consideration, where they seemed preoccupied or too much in a hurry wanting to get to the next patient. And I view those as abuses of their power, because I am powerless when I am there in front of them. I'm coming to them for help, and if I don't feel like they're fully addressing my needs, then I feel like they are not taking their role seriously, and they are taking advantage of the power that they have in this situation. And so you can see how it can be a bad thing, but when handled right, the power differential is definitely a good thing at times. We need that professional person to set aside their personal problems and the issues that they have and not bring them into the workplace. As a trained professional, you should know to do that, but we're all human, and there's going to be times when we're having really bad days when it's hard not to bring that stuff into our work environment, but we need to strive very hard to be self-aware and to not let our personal problems and issues bleed over into our professional lives, because sometimes, depending on the profession that you're in, the professional can really hold the power of life or death at times, and you don't want to have a bad day on the work because someone's life is literally in your hands. So you need to be aware of that power that you have and respect it and honor that. We need to trust that the people we go to are competent and that we are in good hands. We need to trust that they have our best interests at heart. So the power that they have is a good thing when used appropriately. It makes us feel safe, it makes us feel secure. And the flip side of that, it can also make us feel very insecure and like we have no control and like we're not being taken care of. Without the boundaries and the self-awareness, you can do a lot of harm when you are in a position of having up power over another person. Often the times when we think of the word power, it seems to be associated with more of the negative sides of having power, like the coercion, the abuse, the controlling and dominating. So when power is discussed in relation to ethics, the emphasis is usually on the harm that it can cause, by the vulnerability of the client, the power that the therapist has over them, or you can apply that to any situation, an abusive and controlling spouse, for example. I want to let you know that power is not always a bad thing. It certainly can be when it is misused, but like anything, power in and of itself is not evil, it's not bad, it's how you use it. Are all clients vulnerable? There seems to be a mindset that all clients are vulnerable. This is taken from a paper that I read by, and I cannot pronounce his name right, I'm sure I'll put it on the screen, but it's Ofer Zur. He wrote that not all clients are powerless and vulnerable like our literature makes them out to be. And so I'm going to read here what he wrote. He said, looking back over his 20 years on the job, it has become clear to me that while some of my clients have been vulnerable and dependent, others could not have been further from that. While some clients seek counseling when traumatized, confused, and disoriented, others have been very centered and assured, but just needed a new direction in their generally successful lives. While some were young and vulnerable, others were older and strong. While some were immature and dependent and helpless, others were mature and in reasonable control of their lives. While some were hospitalized or forced to seek treatment or services against their will, others were powerful and came to me of their own free will. Some clients were hopeless, depressed, and suicidal. Others were hopeful, enthusiastic, and embraced life in its entirety. While some were homeless, poor, and desperate, others lived in mansions and were simply searching for new ways to enjoy life to its fullest. While some were clinically depressed and barely functioning, others were maybe facing an existential crisis, but were still high-functioning and powerful individuals. While some were poor, others were wealthy. While some were unemployed, others were CEOs of huge corporations. While some were weak, vulnerable, and dependent, and helpless. Others were powerful, dominating, and controlling. As a consumer of services, so let's take therapy services for an example, I think that this mindset does lessen the stigma that is often associated with going to therapy or seeking therapy services. A lot of people seem to have the mindset that you're weak or broken or need to be fixed or that something's wrong with you because you go to therapy. But, some people are highly functioning, they're in control of their lives, they're just looking for ways to help navigate maybe some difficult times, such as empty nest or a forced retirement or an illness. Why go through life not living it to its fullest, dealing with some depression or some sadness or kind of some loss of direction in the moment when you know that things could be better, so you go to someone to be able to help live your life to the fullest. That is a more empowering mindset to me than putting everyone who goes to therapy in with a label of there's something wrong with you, you are somehow weak or not inferior really, but broken in some way, which is why you need help or you need to be fixed, because that's just not always the case. He says, I see the issue of power on a continuum where at one end you have clients who tend to feel dependent, gullible, suggestible, inconsequential, powerless, and feeble. But at the other end are clients who see themselves as sometimes even more powerful than the therapist. And indeed they often are. They might be CEOs of large corporations, judges, powerhouse attorneys, master mediators, or successful entrepreneurs. And Dr. Ofer Zor, I'm probably saying that wrong again, shares a story of a client of his. And I will close this segment of this video with this, and then we will pick up the rest of this in another video. This one client was a female, a very high-strung, successful ex-beauty queen who also was an attorney and was well-read in psychology. One day in a session, she said to him, "You shrinks seem to think that you are these powerful beings. Your literature paints images of clients as helpless, vulnerable, quiet, and weak creatures at the mercy of you omnipotent people. Your ethics make it sound like you can just snap your fingers and I'll jump into your bed. Well, let me tell you something about power. With my JD and PhD, I am better educated than you, which gives me more power than you have with your PhD. As far as I can tell, I'm wealthier than you, which gives me another form of power over you. I have professionally achieved more than you have, which gives me another power advantage. I am an attractive woman, which gives me the undeniable power that sexy women have over men. Finally, I can destroy your career with one call to your licensing board. So much for your illusion of power." So she did admit that he knew more about psychology than she did, which I guess is why she went to him for therapy in the first place. But it did seem important to her to make sure that he knew that she wasn't helpless, vulnerable, and weak. So we will pick back up in another video. Thank you for watching this one, and I'll see you next time.